5 to 10, 2,000 and now. The only one that might squeak into the because he had a part of it was Brett Favre. The only thing is he only put up one Super Bowl, and that was it was hard to believe that he only put up one Super Bowl. You would think that.
Well, that was. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In my opinion, I thought Brett Favre would win a couple more.
Well, Brett Favre's Super Bowl was Desmond Howard. Desmond Howard won that Super Bowl,
the MVP.
And one of the things that I have to, the reason why Marino's not on people's list is because he didn't win a Super Bowl, and John Elway wasn't really the primary reason that the Broncos won the Super Bowl. Yeah, he was a quarterback, but I mean, Terrell Davis and that defense and that veteran team, Elway was more of a game manager at that point.
Yeah.
They said to Elway, just don't screw it up. It wasn't like he was out there just flinging the ball all over the place. They said make a throw here and there, and don't throw the big pick six or the big interception. Just don't make any mistakes.
Yeah. But I do feel, I know you can call it them last couple of years. Well, he was the MVP of the second Super Bowl, but you could say game management because he only had 100 and some yards passing in that first Super Bowl where Terrell Davis ended up being the MVP. But he went out there and he could still run that ball, and I think he had, I don't know, I'd have to go back and look at the stats on that one, but I would like to recheck the rushing yards in that game because I think he rushed for a pretty good amount of yards in that first Super Bowl win. And not a lot of quarterbacks back then were doing that. And that was one thing Joe Montana, I know you said something really weird earlier about Peyton Manning being the running back and quarterback, and it was the dink and dunking thing. And I feel like Joe Montana was sort of the same quarterback because I don't feel that Joe Montana could throw past 30 yards in his prime. And I love Peyton Manning, but I don't see Peyton Manning in his prime throwing past 40 yards.
Well, I think both of them could put the ball, 50, 55 yards if they had to. I think it was just, I actually do remember Montana airing it out, unfortunately. When I remember him hitting John Taylor on some deep routes, and Jerry Rice was more of a slasher, catch it, yards after catch. But it's just one of those things. I'm not going to be into the stats. I'm not going to be into, it's just who gets the job done and how often and how impressive, and do you fear the person? So it's when your team has to play them, are you afraid or are you confident?
Yes.
And unfortunately, when people played Elway, they were confident. They didn't fear him.
They didn't fear him because he never had a team around him. And that's the point I'm trying to make here is, and I know everybody's that's the whole debate is he never had a team like these other guys had, and if he would have had a team around him with some better coaching, personal coaching like the guys do now, the kids now that come in the league, they have personal coaches from the time they're in 5th grade all the way up through the NFL, which John Elway didn't. He had a great coach in his dad, but he didn't have these trainers that train these kids now. And I don't really take the NFL after 2005. I don't really take the stats, quarterback stats, as serious as I did, like I said, back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, because there's just not, you just can't compare them. There's no comparison there. So I don't think that a lot of them guys are gonna get after this. I don't think a lot of them are gonna break the top 10. as far as greatest quarterbacks of all time. You know, even if you got Brady with a billion Super Bowls, I still don't hold him that high because he never had to play that caliber of players, of defenses. So you had the Lawrence Taylors, you had the Charles Haley's. Those guys were scary, man. Even Kevin Green, I could sit here and name off tons of players, which Joe Montana had to play, which John Elway had to play on a regular, consistent basis. So, that was a good debate. We kind of agreed and disagreed, but I think we're still about the same place. I didn't veer you as much over to my side of the John Elway thing as I wanted to, but I think you've listened to Wilbon for 20 years too, so you kind of know what we saw over here since we weren't in prime time all the time.
I would say this about John Elway. I'm not taking anything away from him. I don't think that he obviously. I don't think that he was garbage or anything like that. I do think he was a great quarterback. I don't think he was the greatest of all time. But, one of the things where you say, well, if John Elway played in San Francisco and what if, Joe Montana played here, well, I that's only conjecture. We can kind of guess.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we know what happened where they played.
Yeah.
I
don't know if Joe Montana would have made a Super Bowl coming out of Colorado, to be honest with you.
I mean, what happened? What would happen if Magic went Celtics and Free Bird went to the Lakers? I mean, we don't know.
Yeah. But shout out to my good friend Mark Jackson from the Denver Broncos. Don't think I'm saying that you guys ain't great. You guys are great players. You guys are good friends. I had a lot of good friends on those teams, man. So shout out to all them guys. I don't want them to get mad at me and be like, "Hey, man, we ain't listening to your podcast no more." But shout out to you guys. I loved all you guys. You guys had played some great years, man.
Well, one of the things about the AFC and the NFC in the 80s was the line play. We talk about in the trenches. The NFC, when those guys played Denver across the lines, they would outweigh them by 20, 30, 40 pounds. I mean, so you started to have a sort of like you're almost playing a college team. I mean, Denver had a lot of good skilled players, but on the offensive, defensive line, they were just so small compared to the NFC.
I remember the weight difference in the 1989 Super Bowl. The offensive line for the 49ers were 320, and the defensive line, the average was 260. So that was like a 80-pound difference.
Right.
And that's what it honestly it was. The average weight of the player. So that's a lot of moving around. That it kind of takes me back to that Raider game just a few weeks ago when the Raiders were that offensive line just outmanned the defensive line of the Denver Broncos, and it was ugly. And that's what it looked like back then in the 80s. And you're right, those NFC teams were just built like monsters. All of them, Dallas. That's the way they built those teams. Teams are built different. If you look at like right now, if you look at the AFC West, they're all go-getters. They're all headhunters, if you want to call it though. I didn't want to say it like that because all the concussion protocol and everything. But if you look at the AFC West, that's the way they're built. And I think they got that from the NFC West with Seattle and the 49ers a few years ago. Arizona, I think they kind of paved that way, watching the way Seattle beat up on the Broncos again in another Super Bowl. Hey, we made it to the Super Bowl. I'm just proud of that. But I think they kind of molded those defenses, thinking about it later on. The offense weren't very powerful, but the defenses were just ugly and mean. And if you go over to the, you would think the Ryans would have an ugly, mean defense, and they're like soft and petite and all of those defenses over there in the AFC North. You know, even the Patriots, they don't really do they see that's a team. If you want to talk about scaring people, does that team seem like it's going to scare anybody defensively?
No, not at all.
There's no Von Millers over there. There's no Houstons over there. There's no Khalil Max over there. I can't even think of a name right now that's going to stick out in my mind like that. See, they're built fast though. That's the that's the way those AFC, those East Coast AFC teams are basically. But we got to wrap it up here. We're gonna give you guys the trivia real quick, which I don't get trivia wrong, but actually Rob stumped me, but I actually got it later on because he gave me a second chance. This is something I didn't know, actually. This is something I didn't know. That up until 1973, Rob just gave me this information. Up until 1973, there was no regular starting quarterback. And I really didn't know. I've never known that. I thought Frank Chapruka was our first quarterback of all time that he started. You know, he's a Ring of Famer, and I thought that's where it was at. So it's pretty crazy. So do you want me to give the trivia, or you want to give out the trivia? If they're your trivia, you can go ahead and give them out. You already know I know them all already. So, but okay. I will admit here that I did get the first one wrong, but I did get a second chance, and I did get it right the second time around. Maybe.
Okay. So the part about this question is, since the Denver Broncos joined the NFL, so I was not going for the AFL years. It was the NFL. Since they joined the NFL, who was the first QB to start every game? So until 1973, they had, two quarterbacks, injuries, different reasons. So anyway, long story short, the answer is Charlie Johnson, who started all 14 games in 1973.
Okay. And actually, it's a really good question, and the other reason it got me for two reasons, but the second reason that it got me is because I didn't look at the NFL part. I was thinking when he asked the question, I thought he meant when the Broncos first started. So I'm really trying to back myself up right here, Rob, because I don't like to lose that trivia when it comes to the Broncos, man. But that's a good one. I'm going to remember that forever. So thank you, Rob.
No problem. So the second one is a little bit of a softball one, but who caught John Elway's last pass? Obviously, it's going to be in the Super Bowl, and the answer is Ed McCaffrey.
Yeah.
So that was not his last touchdown, his last completion.
Yeah. And I kind of bid on that one too. I went for Rod Smith because on the Purdy touchdown, but I backed myself. I got myself, and I said Ed McCaffrey.
Yeah, you did. You got it.
Now this one, now this third one though is a really good one, and I almost got it wrong though.
Really? Because you got it. You seem like you got it right away.
I was stuck between the two players.
Okay.
I was stuck between. No, go ahead. You go ahead, and I'll
okay.
And because I'm gonna have to look this one up because I just kind of guessed at it because my other player. Go ahead. My bad. Go ahead, Rob.
What's that?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Which Denver player with at least 100 carries has the highest per carry average in the history of the franchise? And the answer is Quentin Portis, whose career average with Denver is 5.5 yards per carry. And strange enough,
he actually had a season where he averaged 5.9 yards per carry.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. We didn't go to the Super Bowl, and we didn't win it, though.
Hey.
Yeah.
And number 2 on that list, surprisingly, is Tim Tebow.
Yeah. We kind of joked about it, and I was like, I'll take Tim Tebow right now, too. Give me Tim Tebow back. No, where I was stuck on this is